So it is now 7:19 p.m. on the 3rd of March. About 19 minutes, I think, after Valve finished their talk at GDC. Granted, it was a team member of Valve, and it was reported to be a talk on physics in games. I don't know if they actually talked about that, but they did announce Source 2 and some stuff regarding Steam machines and in-home play. And then also a couple days ago, they announced their VR Vive with HTC, which is cool. Well, HTC announced it, but yeah, Valve designed it. So I'm really, really annoyed. I'm not. I'm just depressed again. They scheduled a talk at the Game Developers Conference for 3/3 at 3 p.m. in the time zone that the talk takes place. At 3 p.m. on the 3rd of the 3rd month. And they didn't talk about Half-Life 3. They didn't mention maybe Portal 3 or Minerva 3. I would take any of those. I really would. Minerva, if you don't know, is a mod of Half-Life 2 by Adam Foster, who now works at Valve, and it is fantastic. It takes place in the Half-Life 2 universe. So I would be happy if there was just a Minerva game that was getting the full Valve treatment, or even a Portal 3 at this point. I would take anything from Valve except for this Dota, Counter-Strike Go, Left 4 Dead. I mean, whatever. If people are into those, whatever. But, oh, Valve. They really like to troll us. They really love to troll us. And I don't know why. Maybe they're trying to build up hype for when Half-Life 3 finally launches. They'll get, like, the most sales of all time or something like that. I don't know. But I think it's gotten to the point where it's really kind of mean. It's just not nice. Like, why would you schedule it on that day at that exact time if not to piss off your fans? I don't understand. Come on, Valve. Gabe Newell, Doug Lombardi. I don't know. I don't know who's to blame. I don't think the guy who did the talk is to blame. But I'm sure he was in on this whole thing. I mean, what? So, I'm recording this after you've heard the whole long rant and talk about Half-Life 3. So, I recorded that a while ago. And then this stuff happened. So, I was right about Source 2 coming out. There were rumors, and then they just announced it, and apparently, whatever. The VR thing, there's another thing that could be preventing Half-Life 3 from coming out, is they want it to be exclusive, or the first big game with that VR system. I don't know. But if that were the case, you would think they would announce it. But no. And talking about that VR system, I'm really into keeping up with what's happening in VR. I know a few years back, I don't know if it was 2011, 2012, when John Carmack went to, was it E3 or GDC, and he brought the prototype Oculus Rift that was, a screen with some lenses and duct tape, and I know Gabe Newell, in an interview or statement, he said that he thought this was, or at least maybe it was Valve in general that said that they thought this was a really great thing and that they fully supported it and things to that extent. So I mean, if you followed stuff with VR and AR, you should already know that Valve has been working on that stuff since then, since that first Oculus demo. That piqued their interest, and suddenly they're like totally into it. So I don't know. John Carmack posted a quote on Twitter, kind of passively aggressively saying that Valve's headset, and I think Sony's Morpheus headset and anyone else's, is not going to be as good as Oculus, because Oculus has been constantly iterating and improving and coming up with new prototypes and new dev kits. He posted a quote from something where it talked about a class where half of the class was to make pots, as many as they could, and they would get an A if they got made enough of a certain weight. And then the other half of the class just had to make the best pot, and that's how they could get an A. And at the end, it turned out that the half of the class that was assigned to do quantity over quality actually ended up with the best pots, because they made mistakes, they learned, and they kept making more and more, and they got better and better. And while the other half of the class that were focusing on making the best pot only, theorized and talked about it and didn't actually get a whole lot done. So he was basically saying Valve's HTC Vive headset is not going to be as good as Oculus, but I disagree. The whole point of what he's saying is that the Valve hasn't iterated over and over like Oculus has. Like, it hasn't been working on it as long. But I don't think that's the case. I think Valve probably started working on that right when he showed the prototype Oculus at whatever convention that was. So, and if you go back and look at when they announced the Steam controller, there are photos of all the prototypes that they made before they even announced that version, which ended up changing and getting the touchscreen removed and replaced with buttons. Anyways, there were like 20 prototypes that they made. So they are already iterating like crazy. You know they are. So his comment, maybe it wasn't directed at Valve, but it has to be. Though there were new announcements about Morpheus, Sony's headset. It's going to have OLED displays, OLED displays, which, okay, and it's going to have like a really high resolution, the same resolution as the current Rift. The HTC Vive headset that Valve designed is going to be running at 90 hertz, so 90 frames per second, whereas all the stuff Oculus has done so far has been at 60, but, 120 split in half. The problem with the Oculus is that it's using one screen, whereas the Vive is using two. So the refresh rate thing, they can get away with, they can actually get 90 frames per second. The Oculus Rift, who knows if they'll actually, they're claiming that the most recent prototype, not the DK2, but the one after that, I can't remember the name of it. It's not Crystal Cove. That was the one before the DK2. Whatever. It apparently does 90 hertz as well. But again, it's one screen and not two. So it's splitting that 90 hertz, or maybe they're saying they have a 180 hertz display. That's entirely possible. They're working with Samsung displays, and I think I read something today that the Samsung Galaxy Note 6 or the Samsung Galaxy 6 or something is going to have this new display that the Oculus is playing with. So, Oculus could still be in there. But the big thing right now with the HTC Vive, Vive is a weird name. It's like Revive, but without the re, or Vibe with a B, but not. I don't know. So, the big thing I think that makes a really big difference with the Vive is that it's going to be designed for you to be standing up and walking around. And it's going to have these little base stations that are constantly scanning you, which makes me think of the Kinect and what Microsoft's doing with their shit. But I forget what HoloLens, something like that. Whatever. And Kinect and all that. But no, the Steam thing, basically if you can have a 15-foot by 15-foot room, you'll set this stuff up and you can walk around it and interact with things. And that is another thing they haven't shown yet, but the Vive is going to have its own input device. They haven't said what it is. People are speculating gloves of some sort. Whereas the Microsoft HoloLens thing is all going to be based on the Kinect technology, well, the technology behind Kinect, and reading your movements, your actual hand movements and stuff, which I don't even know if we're to the point that stuff is good enough, because I've seen people, even with the new Kinect on Xbox One, fighting with Kinect. There's videos, tons of them on YouTube, of people trying to get it to register stuff properly. So, who knows? But if they have an actual input device that's a proper one, and it isn't the thing with Sony's Morpheus is that it uses the PlayStation Move controllers, or maybe an upgraded version, but at this point they're showing the PlayStation Move controllers as far as I know. And those are big big sticks you're holding in your hand, and you can't exactly grab things with a stick in your hand. You poke at things, maybe stick the controller through a loop in like a mug and pick it up virtually or whatever, but you can't. I don't know. I'm sure they could figure out lots of cool things to do with it, but without like actual articulation in your hands and your arms, I don't think you're gonna get super immersive environments unless it's game related stuff where you're not gonna be doing that, where you're gonna be using a controller or a flight stick, or like Elite Dangerous is doing now. So who knows what is happening? There's so many companies working on this stuff now. Those are the main ones. Something I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier, but Valve was working on virtual reality and altered reality. No, what is it? What's AR? I can't even remember. My brain is screwed up because I was so hyped up for this talk that never happened. Anyways, Cast AR is this thing where you have these sheets of highly reflective paper that you can put up as like a screen, or you can make an entire room full of this shit. And then you have these glasses that you put on that have projectors in the glasses, and they project onto this reflection or this reflective material, and that reflective material reflects the visual image back to your eyes. So it's not even, there's none of the, you're actually looking at a surface. So there's none of this head fatigue type stuff I think you would get with some of this, or eye fatigue with some of these other VR things, potentially. I don't think it would be any more so than looking at a normal monitor. So, yeah. But that's not VR, that's AR. Even though they have a a thing to clip onto the front of it to basically make the projectors bounce off some mirrors and go straight into your eyes, so it basically becomes a VR headset. They basically decided, we'll do a 2-for-1 here. And I don't know what's happening with Cast AR. I think they finally started shipping out their Kickstarter backers prototypes or dev kits or whatever. I'm not sure if anyone's actually gotten their hands on them at this point, but who knows. So Valve talked about their VR thing. Apparently they talked about Steam boxes, which apparently it's finally going to become a thing. I don't know why anyone cares. You can build your own little computer next to and put it next to your TV if you want. And there you go, is a Steambox. Run Steam Big Picture Mode or run even SteamOS, which is their version of Linux, and you're good to go. But anyways, Steamboxes are finally coming out in November, apparently. And also, they've supposedly perfected the in-home streaming. So if you've got your really awesome hardcore gaming PC, you can stream to a little box they're calling Lighthouse. I don't know. I think it's the technology. No, Lighthouse is the walk around the room technology. What is it? Link? Link is the technology to do the in-home streaming from your gaming PC to your Steambox or whatever. I think it's almost like a Chromecast type thing, but it's a little bigger. Or there's the actual Steam boxes from other companies that are actual full computers. I don't know. I haven't looked at this stuff in depth yet because the news hasn't really been out too long. But it doesn't matter. I don't really care. Steam boxes are kind of cool in theory. It depends on how upgradable they are, which they probably won't be very. I don't know. The only thing I could see is if the Steam boxes were to be released as like on a payment plan, like you pay $20 a month and you get the latest Steam box and you have a really decent gaming PC that maybe it runs SteamOS, maybe you can install Windows on it if you want, but you're basically like leasing it or whatever, and then maybe in a year, maybe once a year or once every 2 years, you get an upgraded thing and you send back the old one. I don't know. That's the only way I can see myself personally being interested in a Steam box, because there's no way I would ever buy one. I have my PC already hooked up to my TV. There's no benefit for me. And SteamOS, it's a version of Linux. It's gonna be a while before games start properly using SteamOS. And I know they have an API that's supposed to like fake DirectX. And maybe, I'm sure it also supports OpenGL, but so many games are built on DirectX these days. Unless they get that perfect, I don't know how SteamOS is going to work. Maybe they'll use some of that faking emulation stuff that Linux users already use to play some PC games. Same stuff that Mac users use to play some PC games. Like, there's a guy I'm subscribed to on YouTube who does Elder Scrolls games, and he actually does them through whatever that emulation stuff is. Though I think at this point he might also have a partition with Windows on it. I don't know. Anyways, I'm rambling. But that's what this thing is, isn't it? So, Steam is doing VR. Valve is doing VR. And it sounds cool. Oculus at this point, they've said over and over that they're focusing on the seated experience. So you're sitting in a chair. Maybe it's a desk chair with wheels so you can spin around. That would make sense. But the idea with Oculus is that you're sitting. And this new Steam thing is all about sitting and standing up and walking around in a room, theoretically the way a holodeck would work in Star Trek, in that the game geometry will change and you'll never bump into your walls because you're constantly turning and going different directions within that 15 by 15 space. theoretically it could work, but I think it would be jarring in the game or in the VR because the world would have to be turning. It's, anyways, it's interesting. It's interesting, but I think it's going to be way more expensive than the Oculus Rift because it's using 2 screens. Those little high pixel density screens are expensive. They are expensive. And putting 2 in a headset like that is going to make it way more expensive than the Oculus Rift. Oculus is supposedly still trying to hit that $300 mark, which is way too expensive for me to afford, but still, it's a thing. It's possible. It's viable for people to buy, people who have money. People who can buy an Xbox One or a PS4, they could buy a Rift. Whereas this Steam thing, I don't know. Unless they intentionally do this whole loss leading? Is that what do you call it? Or whatever. They take a loss at every sale just so people will use it to play their games and games licensed through Steam. That makes sense. Valve has tons of money. It's not like they can't afford to throw some discounted hardware at us and just suck up the cost, because think of how much money they make from Steam already. So, and if they make these VR games cost more, if they say these, especially if it's a AAA VR game, that even like Half-Life 3, God forbid it would ever come out, if it's a AAA and VR, like the VR version could be $100, whereas the regular version would be 60 or 50 or whatever. I could see that happening. And they would make tons of money that way. And through licensing of other VR games through Steam and Steam VR. So I see why they're doing all this stuff, and it's really cool. But where the fuck is Half-Life 3? Or Portal 3? Or Minerva 3? Well, there weren't 3 Minerva. There was someplace else, which was a Half-Life 1 mod, and then there was Minerva episodes. I forget how many there were, 4 maybe. And it ended up being combined into one and being called Metastasis. And then Adam Foster got hired at Valve, and he worked on Portal 2. And I guess everything else they've done since then, I don't know. But I think you could totally see his level design work in Portal 2. The way that the levels make way more use of the space. Like I remember Adam Foster, I've probably talked about this in another Ramblatory nonsense, so if I have, forgive me, but I remember Adam Foster saying in a blog post or something that Valve was very wasteful with the amount of space they actually used in each map. And he could get away with stuff that was crazy. Like I remember playing the beginning of Minerva, and when I got to the first load screen, I was just completely surprised. You can watch my Let's Play of it if you want to. I was completely surprised. That was the first load screen after I'd played for an hour? Something like that? Maybe not that long, but almost. And so you can see his influence on Portal 2. There's a lot of going around in the space, less load times. Though there's the black screen, the loading screens that I think I already talked about, so let's not even go there. But so no Half-Life 3 announced. I don't know what they're doing. I'm depressed. I was so excited today too. I was so excited when I heard, oh, it's the 3rd of the 3rd month and they have a talk at 3 p.m. What could it possibly be? But no, they're fucking trolling us again. What is wrong with you? What is... Valve. I don't understand you. You gotta... I mean, you made us get so connected with that series of games, and then you troll us afterwards when we know we've been hurting for a new installment of it, and then you just... This was to me, this was an even bigger troll than, you know, that picture of Gabe Newell with the Half-Life 3 wallpaper on his computer. It's the biggest troll yet. It is so mean. It's just mean. It's frustrating and mean, and I'm really getting pissed at Valve. And not because they're not announcing Half-Life 3, but because they're being dicks. Apparently they don't listen to Will Wheaton's thing of don't be a dick. I don't know. I'm done rambling about this. This has been the second part of my Half-Life 3 ramblings. Maybe I'll have more in the future. Maybe I won't. I don't know. If you listen to these and actually like them, please leave a comment. I don't do these that often because I really don't think people listen to them. If you'd like to hear more, or if you want to hear me talk about a specific subject, leave a comment, send me a message. Teams seem to send me more private messages through YouTube than actually comment on my stuff. It's really strange. But whatever. I'm cool with that. So if you want to send me a message, whatever. As far as what's going on with my channel and Let's Plays, who knows. Until next time, goodbye.